Well, hello, I'm Ed Parcaut, your host of Helping the Brave, and let's bring in our guest today. It is the Honorable Cheri Mason. How you doing?
Hi, Ed. Thanks for having me. It's great to
Oh,
be here.
my pleasure. All right, so we want to get right into. We had a little talk before our mics went hot, and you worked for the VA for a very long time.
I did. I did. I worked for the VA for 30 years, primarily as an attorney and then as a judge. And I finished my tenure as the fourth chairman of the Board of Veterans Appeals, the first military spouse and woman to hold the position. And so I go deep on veterans disability. That was our primary area of practice, but we also did healthcare as well as a few other issues. And I had also advised the secretary, both the Secretary Wilkie and Secretary Shulkin in the Trump administration, as well as Dennis in the Biden administration.
This might come off the wrong ears, but because I say this a lot, I'd like to have the whole VA system scrapped and just get a really good insurance so that people can just go anywhere. That's just my take on it. This is what I've dealt with. But you worked there, you did that a long time. My problem is there's some good people and there's some good places and there's some really bad places. But if we were able to offer some type of insurance that was, I know we have TRICARE, but I mean, just amazing insurance that they could take anywhere, Kaiser, anywhere, it would be much better for our veterans.
I think you're partially right. I
That's
think
okay.
they're married to a veteran. I definitely see that in practicing in the world for such a long time, especially with medical exams and challenges around that for compensation benefits, which are um, never what we need. Um, I do think that there is a opportunity to serve veterans better. That said, the VA does a lot of research and a lot of work in areas that a lot of people don't realize because they don't tell the VA doesn't tell their story well, and so there's a lot of work being done at the medical centers and research and things to help veterans that are helpful. And my husband is now one of those who says, yeah, when I get in to see my primary care physician, it's great, but getting in the door and getting everything else is a pain in the butt. And he's like, and you worked there for 30 plus years. And I'm like, yeah, and you didn't go for like 15. so, so I understand it. I think, there are a lot of challenges. It's the second largest agency in the government. It is the largest civilian agency. And there are, I think the healthcare side does pretty well compared with the private sector, but there are challenges and there are things that VA can always do better, and I'm all for that.
Yeah, let's go back to what you just said, and I'm going to disagree with you now. My wife works for Kaiser, and we have amazing medical. If I wouldn't have that, it's amazing what we have. So I can see the side that's really good of
Mhm.
civilian medical, but I also can see the other side where employers pick what they're going to pay for people. And so it's not that the medical side is so bad, it's just what the employers can cover. And so when these people go to get their services and they have to pay more for it, you're right, that's an issue. But if we set it up the way that Kaiser set up for their own employees, small $5 copay, ridiculous thing, and have that be able to be seen anywhere, we would have our veterans through the systems and being taken care of a lot faster. I'm not knocking what you guys have done and how good some of the people are at the VA, but there's issues. There's major issues when it comes to helping vets with PTSD and other stuff.
Mhm. Yeah, I think you're right about that, and I think that companies like Kaiser and some of those. I mean, look, I worked for the federal government for 30 years, so we kept my health insurance coming out because why wouldn't we, right? Because it's a better system. He gets care at the VA, but if we have to go outside the VA, we do have me as a backup. And you're right. I think but looking at that as a big system, there it does come with challenges, but I think you're right. I think especially in the areas where VA does really well in caring for veterans who are gravely wounded with specific areas that need support. It's the common areas. And when I say common, I don't mean, I don't mean average. I mean common in that, everybody needs this type of treatment. Mental health is a big one, right?
So what do they do well?
Well, when you're
And
taking
I wasn't negative. I'm just, you said there were certain things they do well. I want to know what.
well, so a friend of mine is her husband is gravely wounded, and so um, you know the care he gets and the understanding of his wounds and the impact of all those wounds, he had like a community care process for a while, and they just couldn't treat him the way VA could treat him because they understood the intricacies of, hey, you've still got shrapnel, we can't go in and move it because it might end your life, right? And so there's certain things that they knew how to treat, to manage differently than the private sector did. But that's a very small number of veterans. I think in general, like you said, the larger, particularly, the standard care issues, and particularly mental health is the biggest challenge VA has, and they had it when I was there and they still have it. It's just there's not enough mental health care providers that anybody can hire to provide what the United States needs, and VA particularly is challenged in that area. And so, why not do it differently? I agree that should be looked at as a whole and say, what do we do well? Let's keep that. And what do we not do well? And that's what community care was supposed to be about, but not currently.
Right. I mean, the way, if you look at the structure, and I don't mean to bring up Kaiser, but I just
No.
deal with it. They have certain specialties at certain areas,
Hmm.
right? They don't have it everywhere. They just
Hmm.
have. So if you need this thing for cancer, you go to this place. If you need this, you go to that place.
Hmm.
That's how. Is that how VA set up?
Um, it's not having worked directly on the
Right.
healthcare side, there are technical areas, special areas that do that in the VA system, but that's fairly a novel approach that has not been that's like in the last, I would say, last 7 years that they've started doing that more so. And I think, quite frankly, probably because they're looking at Kaiser and other places like it that are doing that makes sense.
Yeah, because then you don't have to hire 20 of the same doctors and have them all over the region. You can have a few there, and then they're all handled. And because you
Exactly.
can't have the best all over, you can have the best in one place.
Exactly. And I think that's the way to look at it. I think you're exactly right that there are ways of the excellent, what the VA calls them as communities of excellence, their treatment of excellence. And I think those are areas that the VA needs to look at. They take it into other areas, which is a little bit concerning, but um, on the healthcare side, I completely agree that they need to look at that. And really, I mean, that's what community care is about. But right now there's a wait line to get even out to community care because of the way the department's handling. I've been retired for 18 months, so I hear a lot about it, and I don't disagree. I think it can be done better.
How can it be done better?
Well, I think community care purposely
For
is,
people who don't know what community care, who's listening, what is
so
it?
so community care means that if you can't get into the VA in a reasonable amount of time, or they don't have that specialty, and you have that availability in your community or close community, that you should be able to go there and have VA pay for it. The
Yeah.
problem is that's not how it's working. The
How?
wait
What do you
time.
mean? You have to get approval to go do
You have,
that? Is that
you have to get approvals for it. VA sometimes, from what I'm hearing these days, says, "Oh, well, we can offer it here." Yes, you can offer something, but it's not the same. And so, there's a lot of discussion still in this administration, as there was in the past, about privatization. And privatization is needed. Community care is privatization. The grants for psych, for mental health, are privatization, working with our community partners. There is a reason and a time to use our community partners. And when we're treating veterans, who are our most treasured people in our world because they served so we can be free, then we need to take a good hard look at that and say this makes sense, rather than fighting about, oh, we need to get more people in the healthcare system. Well, they might be in the healthcare system, but does that mean they need to come to you? Maybe not.
Right, I mean, because we could get through the backlog and get everything taken care of, and then it would need to add more. We just got
Exactly.
a bunch of people to deal with. Um, yeah, that whole thing needs to be fixed. The whole purpose was to get people to get seen and not commit suicide in the parking lot.
Exactly. And that for me is, I mean, as a daughter of a veteran who died by suicide, the sister of a reservist who, or National Guard person who died by suicide, suicide prevention is near and dear to my heart, and I talk about it and I engage on it often because we have to do better.
Very much. Yeah, we do. I mean, you probably don't know me, but I'm the president of my Rotary this year. And my goal was to do
Congratulations.
more. Thank you. I only have 45 days left. Thank God. It's a lot. It's a part-time job. Uh, but my goal was to do more for vets in our community because I'm a veteran. And so I had Operation Surf come over from Santa Cruz, who they have there's a documentary on
Mhm,
Netflix called Resurfaced. And they
mhm,
talked about what they did. And then I had a gentleman who was a 10-year Marine and then was incarcerated for 23 years. And he started a program so vets don't get reincarcerated again. And he's had none of his vets have ever went back. And he
mhm.
started the program while he was in and got funded by the governor. And then when he got out, he ran it. So
Wow, that's
yeah,
awesome.
and he has a TED talk on it and everything. And then one of his biggest things is he says, you can paint a Bradley yellow called a school bus, but it doesn't know it's a school bus. It'll still tear up the streets
That's
because
right.
that's what it's done. It's a tool of war.
Yeah,
We need a boot camp out for
yeah.
these people, But
Yeah, a transition is not, for many of our military service members, it's, they take off the uniform and, oh, by the way, you're a civilian. The world is a much different place
Yeah.
when
And not
you've
only
had.
that, most of us have had childhood trauma that we don't really think it's childhood trauma, but then we get the PTSD added, from seeing other things. And it's
Mhm,
really stems from our childhood because no sane person runs towards danger. You have to have something, I don't want to say wrong with you, but something that has affected you to do stuff like that. And the biggest thing I see doing this podcast for almost 3 years is most people have PTSD has a childhood issue that some trauma in their childhood that is got exacerbated by being
mhm,
over in what they've seen. And until you deal with that trauma from the childhood, you're not going to get rid of that PTSD.
That's interesting. I hadn't thought about that, but given I'm just trying to think back through the, I don't know, hundreds and thousands of cases I saw, you're probably onto something there.
Yeah, that's just for me because someone came out with a article that says, I think 65 to 70%. I forget the number they said, but has childhood trauma. I was like, no shit. I've talked to so many people who've had it, and we and asked them, and they were like, yeah, I had this, or
Yeah,
something.
yeah.
I'm listening to a book about Ozempic, and they were talking about
Oh, yeah.
how most people who lose weight bariatric through the surgery, you know, commit suicide a certain
Yeah,
percentage
they
because
do.
of some trauma that they had in their childhood that they were eating to cover the
Yeah,
weight was covering for them,
yeah,
and they didn't deal with that trauma. And I'm like, wow, there is so much that we have trauma from our childhood that if we don't deal with it, it messes with us, and we need to
yep,
go. And everybody's gonna
yeah.
go stop. My age, everybody was like, don't be a what,
Hmm.
just suck it up and go.
Yeah, well, I mean, I definitely have, I lost my father to suicide when I was 4. I grew up in Appalachia. There's definitely trauma there. Um, but, I mean, how you face it and deal with it is important. And, if you don't, then it can come back and impact you. And it will. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, and so I'm just everybody, I mean, because anything you had, unless you, like you said, dealt with it somehow, counseling, whatever that is,
Right.
we normally just shove it under the rug. I remember
Yeah.
my mom; she was the worst about that. She'd shove everything on her rug, and we'd
Yep.
trip over it at Thanksgiving, and it would be a blow up.
Yep.
They and still never got dealt with. And you really
Right.
need to deal with the stuff, and we need to help our vets. And
Yeah.
one of the things I did this year is we put together a 2-day event, and we did a fire walk for veterans.
Mm.
And so we had two speakers, and then at the end of the night, each night was a totally separate day. So they walked across coals and we had Tony Robbins guys
Yeah.
that you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So. Yeah, it was pretty
Yeah,
good.
transition. I mean, helping our veterans transition. I live in Pinehurst, North Carolina, so Fort Bragg, it's still Fort Bragg to us, is just around the corner, right? And there's a variety of service members there who do a variety of different things, and when they come, I'm involved with veterans and military spouse groups. Nature of my work prior to retirement, I'm still involved in it because it's important to me. And invariably, we run across someone who is struggling with that transition because the military was a significant piece of their life and it gave them their identity. And as they're
Hmm.
transitioning into the civilian world, it's scary. It's scary, and it's not just scary for them, it's scary for the entire family, because especially when they've lived that life. I mean, I know I've been through it. My husband's been out now for almost 15 years, but he still works very closely with the community because that's where he's comfortable. And so we're still, the reason we chose to retire where we retired is because that's the community we know, and we want to be around that community, because it's important to us. And so, but helping those service members in particularly transition to civilian, first helping them understand that they have skills, and major skills that private companies are looking for, but then helping them understand how to convey that, and then how to find the right place for them, because not every place is the right fit.
Right. Well, there needs to be. I know there's a few, but there needs. And one of the things I've been trying to put together is a list of everything, so that people have been on my podcast. When people want something, they know where to go to get it, and we need something like that. Google's just not the thing to do.
Well,
Um,
you should add two books: the military career transition and the veteran career journey. Both are excellent. I actually sit on the board for the veteran career journey.
mhm.
The author formed a nonprofit board because he's trying to put this book, he's a veteran, into every veteran's hands, and family members, because it's understanding that transition from service to civilian and
What
what
was the
it
name of the
looks
books
like.
again?
The first one's the military career transition, I think is the name of the first one. The second one is the veteran career journey. Sorry. The author is Bill Kieffer, Kieffer. And I know Bill very well, and those two resources, I think, and he teaches with the Honor Foundation, and does some other work, but he's trying to get these books out there into the hands of others, and he wants to do it for free. So that's why he started a nonprofit, and he wants to provide the training, because it's the transition is just, it's hard, and it's not one and done, it's ongoing.
Well, I think the people who have the worst transition is 5 to 10 years in the service,
Yes. Hmm.
not the people who retire and that kind of stuff, because they have trouble. They've lost their purpose, but at least they have a paycheck, somewhat of a paycheck when they get out. But the biggest thing I see, and I had another guy on where he came up with a book, laugh. It was laugh. I got the book behind me. I can't grab, but it's basically how to deal with PTSD, and it was about
Hmm.
laughing. But he was saying the biggest problem he has is the fact that I was in physical therapy when I was in the Navy. Could
Hmm.
I do what I did in physical therapy when I got out? No. There needs to be some way to translate that, what we do in the military, exactly into the civilian world. I talked to a guy that was at the firewalk, and he had been out about 6 months. He's an engineer,
Hmm.
but nobody will hire him as an engineer.
Hmm. Yep.
That's a
Yep.
problem. We
That's a
need to
problem.
fix that.
Yeah, and that's the other thing is, and right now it's on the service member to figure that out, which is why these books are important, because Bill does provide some information, because he was in the military and then he transitioned into HR. And so he saw it from the HR side of the desk. And so he looks at it from that viewpoint, like, this is how you need to package yourself and explain yourself, because somebody has to do it. And, unfortunately, right now it's got to be you. And I think that's the thing is figuring out those skills and helping, because the TAP program, and everybody thinks VA owns the TAP program. VA doesn't own the TAP program. Department of Labor, Vets owns the TAP program, and VA used to consult on it, but they don't do that anymore, and so that's a problem too. um,
For people,
it-
the TAP program,
it's the Transition Assistance Program.
is that the one
Uh,
that you get when you were getting out that
yep.
week? Yeah.
hmm And what happens is the service member goes. Does the spouse go? No. Should the spouse go? Absolutely. Should the spouse be involved in the transition process? Yes, yes, and yes again, because there's so much coming out, even in the VA processes. And I worked on this in VA, and I tried to explain it to Veterans Benefits, and I tried to explain it to two administrations. And I'm like, look, if the spouse isn't involved, you're not going to get engagement to the level that you need to, because the veteran's full, the service member is full, and the spouse will handle some of those things and take and manage it. But if the spouse doesn't know or is not engaged, then they can't help. And that's where we get in trouble. And we get in trouble not only with our service members and our veterans, but we get in trouble with our families, same way. So we lose too many in all those areas because they struggle.
So how do we fix that?
hmm
Because the TAP
Communi-
program's not the greatest program.
I mean, I just happened to be in an event this past week with the assistant secretary for DOL vets, and one of my last trips in the VA was running around Alaska with him, talking to veterans and spouses, and we talked about the challenges then, and they're still the same challenges. And I'm like, look, you're doing stuff, but you're not reaching who you need to reach. I mean, I'm like, you guys are the best kept secret in the government. Because people don't know that they own it, so people don't go to them, they come to the VA, and VA's not doing anything about it. So the fix is getting organizations out there those partner organizations who can come alongside, because that's what it's going to take. It's not going to be the government, it's not going to be VA, it's not going to be DOL, it's certainly not going to be a DOD. It's got to be those partner organizations. And that's one of the things that I built and fed and supported as chairman, was building those relationships with our partner organizations, because I needed them, one, to give me feedback, but two, to tell me what we didn't know and what we were missing.
Please don't take this wrong, but why aren't you doing this?
Why am I not doing what?
Helping out on the TAP program.
Oh,
You said it's going to take somebody else to do it, and you just said you did all that when you were in the VA.
yeah, I'm talking to him, but I'm not in the government anymore.
Yeah, you said you're going to be a private. You said it was going to be a private company to do this.
Well, it's got to be a private. It's got to be a partner, and I'm working with several partners, but you've got to find the right partner that has the right funding to do that. I'm working with a couple. They need funding.
Oh,
yeah.
From where?
Well,
Government?
they need. Yeah. Well, no. I mean, grants would help. Grants will help, but they need funding. Like, right now we have several corporations. Wells Fargo, USAA. I think I've got a delay happening. I'm going to give it a minute.
That's okay.
USAA, Wells Fargo, the big funders who are out there. Yeah, the big funders who are out there need to be funding these organizations. Like right now, there's a big group called Face the Fight, which is bringing a lot of organizations together to fight suicide. Okay, but they've been in place now for 9 months, and they're just getting their feet under them. I'm involved, but nobody's tapping me on the shoulder going, will you please lead this? I'm available, I'm involved. I'm out here doing my thing, but it's going to take that level of engagement and somebody who can kind of grow it. And like I said, I'm involved with different organizations, but I don't want to start my own, because we've already got too many. What I'm trying to do with a couple of people is try to find the right one to try and get the funding and the pieces behind it that will do what we need to do.
All right. So when you just said we have too many, right?
Mm-hmm.
One of the things I found there's a lot of silos. There's a lot of companies, but they don't talk to each other. They don't help each other out because they need to have their own funding, and they're so important. When in reality, if we all work together, we're here for the veterans. We're not here for any other reason.
Bingo.
So here's your problem. If you need help, let me know. But somebody's going to have to do it and start another company. And then those other ones will probably go away.
Okay, let me see what I can do. I've only been retired for 18 months, but let me see
No,
what
I'm
I can
not
do.
trying to pressure you into. I'm just saying that's the problem is we can
You're
all
exactly right.
say the same thing. There are already people, but they haven't done it to this point. They're not going to do it anymore. And what do we need to do? I'm good at selling things. I found out the other day because I'm in the mortgage industry, and our industry took up, in the last
Yeah.
18 months. And so I was like, why don't you go put out there to see what else you can do? So I did some testing, and they're like, you're in the top 15% of the United States, or I should say, of people. And I go, what do you mean by that? They go, you can come up with the idea, and then you can sell the idea. Most people can come up with it, and other people can sell it, but you don't have the same in the same person. So
You're absolutely right.
yeah.
That's a gift.
Yeah. So that's why I've always found I did really well in my industry, because when I come across a problem, I could figure it out and sell it, and it's looked at differently than everybody else.
Yep, I'm trying.
I'm not trying to put you pressure on you. I'm
No,
just
I'm
saying
good. I'm good.
but you
I can
have
take it, girl.
resources. You have resources from what you did
Mhm.
for 30 years, and the connections from what you did for 30 years, and people you still know because you only been out for 18 months to help grow this thing and get the right people and get it to where you need to be, Congress and everybody else, and talking to the right people, say, hey, I need some funding from you guys.
Mhm. Yeah.
That's
And
just what I see. I'm good at telling other people what they're good at. I'm not good at telling
and
myself.
I'm working on that with 2 different groups right now, but they already have CEOs, so but they're getting their feet under them. They're not running yet. So, if the CEOs need assistance, then, that's my job as advisor right now.
I understand what you're saying, but it sounds to me like you could be better at other things. And you are
Well,
female, you'd be better at running it than anybody else.
I do have some successes there. That's why I wrote the book about leadership, because I led differently, and so I do think differently and I do lead differently. But you also, when you come into, as you know, when you come into organizations, you kind of have to give them some room and let them figure things out and see what they want to do.
Yeah, see, I come from the private sector, so either get it done or get out.
Well, I mean, I think there's a lot to say there. I mean, when I was asked to step in as chairman by the Trump administration, I told them very clearly, I'm happy to do it, but I'm going to lead the way I lead. And the president and vice president told me that's why they were hiring me. And so I did it. Then I did it for 5 years through that administration and partially through the next one. And, um, the next one decided that they wanted a different look in that seat. So they pushed me out a year early.
Well, they wanted to, yeah. They don't want the best for the job. They want to pick a box, and we'll just move on.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's not about being the best for the job. It's about picking a box, and that's it, which is horrible because
right.
then we suffer. So, all right. So you have a book. We didn't talk about you. You wrote on leadership.
Politics.
You said, huh? I'm sorry.
I do. Yes. So the book is yes.
There's a
Can
little
you hear
delay.
me? Yes.
I can hear you
No.
now. Yes.
Maybe. Yes. Yes. Okay. Okay. Yes, I wrote a book. It's called Dare to Relate: Leading with a Fierce Heart, and it really talks about my journey to figuring out what kind of leader I was after losing my father to suicide when I was a child, and then my brother, and then becoming a military spouse, where at that time senior military spouses tried to put me in a box and tell me I couldn't do certain things and tried to make me invisible. And I refused to accept that. And I carved a career and supported my husband's career in the military and supported the military. And then rose to the level of a presidentially appointed senior official in the VA. And when through my leadership journey, I found that I led differently. Most leaders drive for results at the expense of their people, and I didn't do that. I I drove for my people. So I engaged the workforce as people with whole lives outside of work. I cared for them. I invested in them. I brought in tools. I brought in the mission for them to understand and support and why it was important. And the 5 years I was at the board, we delivered more cases. We doubled the number of decisions for veterans and their families. We brought in an innovative technology and we were able to offer virtual telehearings from laptops and cell phones. So veterans, if they wanted a hearing, could hold one from wherever they were and didn't have to travel. So no stress and no, you know, challenges of driving 6 to 8 hours or flying to a hearing. And then I also hired 70 more veterans law judges, mostly veterans and military spouses, to reflect the community we served, the culture and the community we served. And so I wrote the book about that and why it's important to relate to your people, because the impact and importance of people and relationships are what drive us, because we're all human beings and we all want to matter and we all want to have purpose and impact.
Wow. Sounds like a book I got to get. I assume it's on Amazon.
It's on Amazon. Dare to Relate: Leading with a Fierce Heart. I usually have a picture of it somewhere, but for some reason I don't right now.
Well, you said you're in the middle of a big room. So
I am. We're moving our son to a different location, and so the books are in the car because I have a book signing again tomorrow night. So the
when
books
did the
are all
book come out?
Book came out about a month ago on Amazon at the beginning of April.
All right. Well, can I get a signed copy of one and I'll buy another one for somebody else?
You can. If you go to my website, I'll connect with you on that later, but it's Catalyst Leadership MGMT, all one word, .com. You can sign up for a signed copy and we'll send you an invoice and then we'll send you a book.
All right. Sounds good. All right. Thank you so much for being on the show today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for
we could be
having
here
me.
for another half hour, I know, talking about more, but I try to keep it right at 30 minutes.
And I really appreciate all you do, because I think talking about this and challenging and just letting people know that you're out there fighting for them is so important.
Oh,
Thank you.
That's what we're trying to do what we can do. Because when I first got out, I ran away from the military as far as I could get. And then I came back a few years later. So
Yep, that's common.
didn't know that. All right.
It is.
All right,
Yeah.
everybody. Thank you for being here today. Really appreciate it. Again, best way to reach you, your website again?
The website is Catalyst, CATALYST, leadership, MGMT.com.
All right.
Or you can follow me on LinkedIn at Cheri Mason.
There you go. Thank you, Cheri Mason, for coming on the show today.
Thanks, Ed. It's great to talk to you.
All right. Make it a